The house always felt quieter in the late evening, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Soft amber light spilled from a single lamp in the living room, tracing long shadows across the wooden floor, settling gently against framed photographs that told a story she rarely allowed herself to revisit. She moved through the space slowly, deliberately, her movements careful, not because she was tired, but because stillness had become a language she understood too well. Outside, rain whispered against the windows, thin and steady, like a memory refusing to fade. She stood near the window, arms folded loosely around herself, watching the world blur beyond the glass. Somewhere between reflection and reality, her thoughts drifted, not forward, never forward, but back, always back. It had been years since she'd allowed herself to want anything. Years since she had learned how to be content in survival instead of happiness. A soft sound interrupted the silence, the quiet click of a door opening. Her son stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket, cheeks flushed from the cold. He was taller now, broader, carrying himself with a quiet confidence that surprised her sometimes. She watched him the way only a mother could, noticing everything, even the things he thought were invisible. "Hey," he said gently, voice low, as if instinctively matching the mood of the room. She smiled, small and warm. "You're late." He shrugged, setting his keys down. Got held up. He didn't elaborate. He never did when something mattered. They shared a comfortable silence, the kind that had grown between them over the years, not awkward, not empty, but full of understanding. He crossed the room, paused, then reached into his bag. "I got you something," he said. Her brows knit slightly. "It's not my birthday." "I know." There was something in his tone, careful, intentional, that made her heart shift uncomfortably. She turned fully toward him, studying his face, searching for answers he hadn't yet offered. He handed her a small box. Simple, matte black. No ribbon. No explanation. For a moment, she didn't take it. Her fingers hovered, uncertainty rippling through her chest. Gifts had always made her uneasy, they carried expectations, emotional weight she wasn't sure she could hold anymore. "You didn't have to," she murmured. "I wanted to." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a quiet recognition, a shared understanding that this moment wasn't as small as it seemed. She accepted the box. The weight of it felt heavier than it should have been. Carefully, she opened it. Inside, resting against soft velvet, was a thin silver circle, simple, unadorned, impossibly understated. No gemstones. No engraving. Just a perfect, continuous loop. Her breath caught. She didn't touch it right away. Something about it stirred a feeling she hadn't prepared for, a warmth mixed with ache, familiarity tinged with fear. The circle felt symbolic in a way she couldn't yet articulate, like it was holding a truth she'd spent years avoiding. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Her son watched her closely, expression unreadable. "I thought you'd understand it." She finally lifted the circle, its cool surface pressing into her skin, grounding her in the moment. As she held it, images flickered through her mind, half-remembered laughter, long walks, shared silences filled with meaning. And one face. Always the same face. She swallowed, fingers tightening around the silver. "Why this?" she asked softly. He hesitated, just a fraction, then spoke. "Because circles don't end. And because some things aren't meant to be left unfinished." Her chest tightened painfully. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping insistently against the glass, echoing the sudden rhythm of her heart. She looked at her son again, really looked at him, and realized with startling clarity that he saw more than she'd ever allowed herself to believe. "You've been lonely," he said quietly. The word landed gently, but it struck deep. "I'm fine," she replied instinctively. He smiled, not unkindly, but knowingly. "I didn't say you weren't." Silence stretched between them, thick and charged. She lowered her gaze, turning the silver circle slowly between her fingers, feeling its smooth continuity, its quiet insistence. In that moment, she understood something that unsettled her deeply. This gift wasn't just from her son. It was an invitation. A reminder. A gentle push toward something she had been circling for years, something standing just beyond the edge of her courage. Somewhere in the distance, a door closed softly. And without knowing why, her thoughts drifted to him, to the way his voice softened when he spoke her name, to the space he always left between them, careful and respectful, heavy with restraint. The circle felt warmer now. Like it was waiting. The silver circle stayed with her long after the house had gone quiet again. Later that night, she sat alone at the kitchen table, the lamp above casting a soft, intimate glow that made everything feel smaller, closer, more exposed. The rain had slowed to a faint drizzle, but its presence lingered in the air, damp and heavy, like a held breath that refused to release. The circle rested in her palm. She turned it slowly, the smooth metal catching the light with each movement, endless and unbroken. There was something unnerving about its simplicity, how it refused to distract, refused to explain itself, existing only as it was. Her son's words echoed again. Some things aren't meant to be left unfinished. She closed her fingers around it, pressing it against her skin as if the contact might quiet the sudden unrest inside her chest. It didn't. Instead, memories surfaced, not sharply, but gently, like scenes dissolving into one another. Him, standing at the edge of her life for years. Always present, never intrusive. Always close, never crossing the invisible line she'd drawn without realizing it. She remembered the way he listened more than he spoke, the way his eyes lingered just long enough to suggest something deeper, then retreated, respectful, restrained. Safe. Dangerous in the quietest way. She exhaled slowly, standing and carrying the circle with her as she moved through the darkened hallway. Outside her bedroom door, she paused, hesitation rippling through her. She hadn't worn jewelry in years. Still, she slipped the circle onto her finger. It fit perfectly. The realization sent a shiver through her, subtle but unmistakable. She stared at her hand, turning it slightly, watching how naturally it belonged there, as if it had always been waiting. Sleep came slowly that night, fragmented and restless, filled with half-dreams and unspoken conversations. By morning, the sky was pale and overcast, washed in muted light. She moved through her routine on instinct, coffee, the soft hum of the kettle, the familiar comfort of repetition. Yet everything felt altered, as though something inside her had shifted just enough to make the world unfamiliar. A knock sounded at the door. She froze. For a moment, she simply stood there, heart stirring with a recognition she hadn't yet named. Then she crossed the room and opened it. He stood on the threshold, rain jacket slung over one shoulder, hair still damp, eyes steady and searching. "Morning," he said softly. Her breath caught, only briefly, but long enough to matter. "I didn't know you were coming by," she replied. "I was nearby." A pause. "Thought I'd check in." They stood there for a moment, suspended in the space between invitation and restraint. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." The air between them shifted the moment he crossed the threshold, thickening with something unspoken. He noticed it too, she could tell by the way his shoulders stilled, by the careful way his gaze moved to her hand. The circle. His eyes lingered, just for a second. "You're wearing it," he said quietly. She nodded, fingers curling instinctively. "My son gave it to me." Something unreadable passed across his face, surprise, perhaps, or understanding, before it softened into something gentler. "It suits you," he said. They moved into the living room, sitting opposite one another at first, space carefully maintained. The quiet stretched comfortably, then uneasily, then back again, as if neither of them wanted to be the first to disturb it. She watched him from the corner of her eye, the way he leaned forward slightly when he spoke, the way his hands rested loosely on his knees, restrained but expressive. He had always been like this, attentive, present, deeply aware of her without ever making it obvious. "You seem different today," he said after a while. She hesitated. "Different how?" "Quieter." A small smile. But not closed. Her pulse quickened. She looked down at her hand again, thumb brushing the circle, grounding herself. "Maybe I'm just tired of pretending I don't feel things." The words surprised her as soon as they left her mouth. His gaze sharpened, intensity blooming beneath the calm. "That's not something you usually say." "I know." Silence followed, not empty, but charged, filled with things neither of them dared to voice. He shifted slightly closer without seeming to move at all, the distance between them narrowing just enough to be noticed. She could feel him now, his presence warm and steady, a quiet gravity pulling at her carefully built defenses. "There are moments," he said slowly, "when I think you already know what you want, and you're just waiting for permission." Her chest tightened painfully. "Permission from who?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "From yourself." The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Her heart pounded, each beat echoing loudly in her ears. She wanted to look away, to retreat into the safety of silence, but something held her there. The circle felt warm against her skin. "I don't trust myself anymore," she admitted softly. His voice dropped. "I do." The simplicity of the words unraveled her. Their eyes locked, the space between them humming with restrained emotion. He lifted his hand slightly, then stopped, hesitation freezing the movement midway, a near touch, unfinished, trembling with intention. Time slowed. For a moment, she thought he might say it. Confess something neither of them had ever named. Instead, he let his hand fall back to his side, restraint reclaiming its place between them. "I should go," he said quietly. Disappointment flickered through her, sharp and unexpected. Stay, she said before she could stop herself. The word lingered in the air, fragile and exposed. He looked at her, really looked, and something shifted behind his eyes, a crack forming in the careful control he'd maintained for so long. I don't know how to stay, he admitted. She stood slowly, closing the distance between them until they were close enough to feel each other's breath, close enough to sense the truth hovering just beneath the surface. Neither do I, she whispered. The circle caught the light between them, glinting softly, a quiet reminder that some things, once set in motion, could no longer be ignored. And still, neither of them spoke the words. The silence after her whispered words lingered too long to be accidental. Neither of them moved. They stood close enough now that the warmth of his presence pressed gently against her senses, not overwhelming, not urgent, but unmistakably real. The kind of closeness that made retreat feel impossible without consequence. Outside, the rain had stopped completely, leaving behind a damp stillness that wrapped the house in quiet expectation. He inhaled slowly, as if steadying himself. Do you know, he began, voice low, deliberate, how many times I've stood right where I'm standing now, and walked away. Her heart clenched. She looked up at him, searching his face, reading the restraint etched into every line. Why did you? Because wanting you, he said softly, always felt like something I had to earn. Or be invited into. The words struck deeper than she expected. She turned slightly, resting her hand against the back of the chair beside her, grounding herself. The silver circle glimmered faintly, catching the pale morning light, pulling his gaze again, drawn to it like a confession he could almost touch. My son, she said quietly, he sees things I pretend not to. He nodded. He always has. She swallowed, emotion tightening her throat. He gave me this because he thinks I've been living in half-finished moments. His eyes softened, something painful and tender flickering beneath the surface. He's not wrong. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. For years, she had lived carefully, loving quietly, wanting silently, protecting herself with distance disguised as strength. And yet, standing here with him, all that careful structure felt fragile, ready to collapse under the weight of truth. I don't know when it happened, she admitted. Or how. I just know that every time you were near, I felt steadier. And more afraid. He smiled faintly. That sounds familiar. They moved to the couch without discussion, sitting close but not touching, knees angled toward each other, bodies aligned in unconscious agreement. The space between them buzzed with everything they weren't saying. I never wanted to be another loss in your life, he said after a while. She turned to him fully then. You wouldn't have been. He hesitated. You couldn't have known that. I could have learned, she whispered. His gaze dropped briefly, then returned to hers, raw and searching. I stayed because I cared. I stayed quiet because I respected you. But there were nights I left here and felt like I was abandoning something unfinished. The word echoed. Unfinished. Her fingers curled around the circle instinctively, pressing it into her palm until she could feel its shape clearly, endless, continuous, impossible to break. She stood abruptly, emotion cresting too high to remain still. Crossing the room, she stopped near the window, back turned to him, breathing uneven. I didn't think I deserved another beginning, she said, voice trembling. I thought loving again would erase what I had before. He rose slowly, approaching with care, stopping just behind her, close enough to feel, not close enough to overwhelm. Love doesn't erase, he said gently. It expands. Tears stung her eyes. She turned to face him, vulnerability laid bare in her expression. What if I fail? What if I can't be what you need? His answer came without hesitation. I don't need perfection. I need honesty. Her breath caught. The circle felt suddenly heavier, warmer, alive with meaning. Slowly, deliberately, she slid it off her finger and held it out to him, palm open. This scares me, she confessed. Because it feels like admitting something I've been avoiding for years. He looked at the circle, then at her, understanding dawning with quiet intensity. It's not a promise, she continued. It's not a future I can guarantee. It's just the truth of where I am right now. Carefully, reverently, he closed his fingers around the circle, then lifted her hand with his other, holding it between them, grounding them both. That's all I've ever wanted, he said. Their eyes locked, the world narrowing to the space they shared. His thumb brushed lightly over her knuckles, the first intentional touch between them, sending a tremor through her entire body. I've loved you, he said, voice thick with emotion, in quiet ways. Patient ways. Ways that never asked for anything in return. Her heart shattered open. Tears slipped free, tracing silent paths down her cheeks. I think, she whispered, I've been loving you too, without letting myself say it. The words hung there, fragile and powerful. He leaned in slightly, forehead nearly touching hers, breath mingling with hers in a suspended moment that felt inevitable and terrifying all at once. Then say it, he murmured. Her lips parted. Her heart raced. And just as the words rose to the surface, just as the truth demanded release, a sound broke the moment. Keys at the door. Her son's voice, distant but unmistakable, calling out. They froze. Reality rushed back in, sharp and disorienting, leaving the confession unfinished, the air thick with what had almost been said. She pulled back slightly, heart pounding, eyes still locked with his. The circle rested between them, no longer hidden, no longer silent. Just waiting.